The New York Mets have won 5 in a row by sweeping the Padres. Is this team finally legit? We'll talk about it on today's show.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. This team, the New York Mets feel all the way back. 5 wins in a row ever since Grimace threw out that first pitch. This team just cannot lose at Citi Field. Amazing to see them finally have a great homestand going 5-1. And I'm willing now to attribute that first loss to jet lag. I didn't buy that when the game first happened. I wasn't going to give the Mets that level of a benefit of the doubt at that time. But now that we've seen them since win these 5 games, how about it? This team's on a roll. And it was great to see them deliver on Father's Day. I was remiss not to mention it on yesterday's show. So happy Father's Day, or happy belated Father's Day to all of you out there. I did, of course, talk to my dad on Father's Day and wish him a happy Father's Day, but he didn't get the shout out on the pod that he's accustomed to. And I'm sure a lot of you have been listening for a while are accustomed to. So thank you, Dad, as always, for making me a Mets fan, making me crazy about this since I was a little kid. Put me in the position that I am today to actually do this for you all every day. So thanks, Dad. And let's talk about a game here, because it was really a team game, top to bottom. Great defense throughout. Jeff McNeil played awesome second base in this series. Ended an inning with a backhanded play to a glove toss to Lindor. Pete Alonso turned a huge double play late in the game. Harrison Bader with the leap and catch. Starling Marte finally laid out for one. He also let one drop at his feet that he should have caught earlier, but regardless, he finally laid out for one and made a catch. And every single hitter in the starting lineup got a hit. And the Mets won 5 straight with runners in scoring position. So there's just really nothing to poke holes in throughout this game when it comes to just the final result, although it did get dicey a couple of times. But let's talk about the top 4 in this lineup, because we saw their ability to put runs up in a hurry in the first inning. The Mets were trailing 1-0. Francisco Lindor erased that deficit with one swing. Leadoff homer for Lindor against a good pitcher in Dylan Cease. And man, the Mets made Dylan Cease look like a pretty bad pitcher in this one, because it was 4 batters in, 4 runs up, as Brandon Nimmo got a hit after Lindor's homer. JD Martinez drew a walk, and then Pete Alonso gets a first pitch fastball down the middle and did not miss it. Crushed it. 3-run homer, Mets up 4-1. And they basically cruised after that in the 4th inning. They piled on some more runs. Luis Torrens started off a rally with a base hit. After Jeff McNeil flew out, Harrison Bader doubled in Torrens. He then advanced to third on a wild pitch and scored on a sac fly from Francisco Lindor. Brandon Nimmo then singled. And then JD Martinez doubled him home, 7-1 Mets. But it wasn't going to be that easy. Tyler McGill had another mixed start. Allowed 5 hits, walked 2, struck out 5, gave up 2 runs, 1 in the first, 1 in the 5th. And they talked about a lot in the broadcast. McGill has a tendency to get the first 2 outs and then struggle to put an inning away. And that leads to an elongated pitch counts and ultimately prevents him from going deep into games. It's something you have to monitor, because you want to see your pitchers hopefully get through 6. That's not something McGill has been able to do. And he does have some optionality. So you always wonder who's going to be the guy that has to be pulled to put Christian Scott back in the rotation. Quintana was the guy I was talking about. He had a quality start in this series. We'll see how he follows that up. But you look at Tyler McGill and David Peterson, you can maintain your depth by optioning one of them and calling Christian Scott up. So these guys are really every single time trying to solidify themselves. And I see some things I really like from Tyler McGill. For example, 5th inning does not start well. Gives up a pair of doubles that somehow did not result in a run, because Luis Campusano for the Padres had some terrible base running where he's standing on second. He ends up on third from a double off the bat of a rise. So now you have runners at second and third, nobody out. Fernando Tatis Jr. coming up. chance for the game to get blown wide open. And Tyler McGill gets a big strikeout. Now, I will say Tatis had a horrible series. The Mets really handled him well, but still, that guy is a threat, and he was hot coming into this series. So a big strikeout from McGill. He gets a ground out that scores one, strands the other with a fly out to the next batter, and there you go. Ends up avoiding more damage and gets a win. So he did well, but there's still an extra level that I think he has to get to, and he has the stuff to do it. It's just sometimes the execution where he's losing guys that he needs to, attack, like walking the ninth hitter. You can't do that. You gotta just attack the zone and see what happens. So we'll see how he continues to progress. I still have faith in his stuff, but long term, who knows? That stuff could play better out of the bullpen, even because you see his brother is a lockdown reliever. So we'll see what happens there. But hey, Adrian Hauser comes in after McGill, and you hoped he would just cruise 7-2 lead, just get some ground balls and get out of Dodge, right? 6th inning, 7th inning, that works out. And great defense in that 7th to help out Hauser. That was the Alonso double play. And then Starling Marte makes the diving catch. 8th inning, Hauser gives up a leadoff hit, and then Carlos Mendoza grabs Jake Diekman, which I did not love in that moment because I was thinking, all right, Hauser's the guy to keep getting ground balls and eat up the innings. I didn't think they had to go to Diekman there. Now, to Mendoza's credit, Diekman did get a comebacker that could have turned two. The problem, he made an error. And I will always note this every time it happens. I hate it when a pitcher makes an error and it's not counted against him as an earned run when the day is done. It frustrates me because he should have a inflated ERA based on this outing because he makes an error. So now it's runners at first and third, and then he walks the next two guys. So he walks in a run. Then he gets a ground out, but that scores another. So all of a sudden, 7-4, here comes Drew Smith. Now Drew Smith gives up a double. So that scores one. Then a sac fly. So now it's 7-6. Getting dicey. Luis Ariz gets a base hit that could have scored a run. But Starling Marte, while I have knocked his defense a ton, you always have to worry about his arm. So that is the one benefit that Marte brings to you in right field is they didn't even try to score there. And if they did, Marte probably would have thrown the runner out at the plate. So that keeps the runner at third. And then Drew Smith gets the big strikeout of Tatis to get out of that threat. But here's where the Mets are new, because when the Mets get out of that inning, my thought is, all right, let's see if Edwin Diaz really is back. He's going to get another high leverage save opportunity 1-run game. But I wasn't really expecting the Mets to explode again offensively, and they did. Turan's leadoff homer. He caught that whole disaster of an inning, comes right back out, takes off the gear, gets in the batter's box, one swing, boom, insurance run. And then it felt like the pressure was just released. And then Jeff McNeil doubles. And I also want to acknowledge that before that double, Jeff McNeil had a 9-pitch at bat against the lefty Yuki Matsui, where he was fouling off a lot of pitches, looking like old Jeff McNeil. Now he flew out, but I felt like that was a big at bat for him. And I had the thought, I wonder if that at bat turns things around for him. And his next at bat after it, he doubles. So good to see, something to monitor. The Mets right now are going to keep riding Jeff McNeil. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the next segment, but there's a reason for it, because if he gets back to being himself, the team gets that much better. And if there's one thing that you can say about Jeff McNeil over the last couple of years, when he's good, the team's been good. But I also feel like it's not because he's good that the team's good. It's that Jeff McNeil is a good player when you have a good team, which I'll talk about it more in the next segment. But it's a weird thing where when the Mets have been great, McNeil has been great. But I feel like he's almost a front runner in that way. Again, we'll talk about it more in the next segment. But after McNeil's double, Harrison Bader gets a base hit. He then stole second. Francisco Lindor loads the bases. Brandon Nimmo singles in one. JD Martinez surprisingly struck out. And then Pete Alonso singled in two more. So a 5 RBI day for Pete, 11-6 Mets. Here comes Sean Reed-Foley for the ninth. He gets 3 ground outs to McNeil, and the game is over. Sweep is complete, and you got to feel great about where this team is. I want to talk about the state of the lineup, the top 4, how good they can be compared to the other teams in the wild card race, and why there's a lot of optimism with the back 5 that can really help contribute as well and make this team a real threat. So we'll talk about all that in just a minute. First, though, a word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Summertime means baseball, but also you still got at least one more game in the NBA Finals and another in the Stanley Cup Finals. You can bet on all of it with FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 that you can use to bet on everything from Finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the ballpark. Maybe you had Pete Alonso today. Well, guess what? You would have won. You could have had a same game parlay with Alonso and the Mets winning. You would have won even more. And remember, again, you place that $5 bet, you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less than on 2 or more player stats, and you watch the winnings roll in. David Peterson tonight, you can look at his strikeouts at 4.5. You might want to take more there. Brandon Nimmo, if he just gets a walk, you could put that in there as more, and you would get another win on your entry. His mark is set at 0.5. You can also cross over sports. So maybe you want to look at a Met as well as a Celtic in the NBA Finals. You can do all of that over at Prize Picks. And they have quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types, which is what makes Prize Picks the #1 fantasy sports app. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy with Prize Picks. Game 5 of the NBA Finals is tonight. If you don't want to miss out on any of the latest in the world of sports, make sure you check out Locked On Sports today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube. The New York Mets are a game and a half out of the playoff race. It is crazy how jumbled up you have this NL wild card. And I look at this Mets team, and I really feel like they can compete with anyone, especially that you saw the potential of the top 4 of their lineup. I talked about it last week. Maybe it's time the Mets change up their lineup, put Brandon Nimmo 2, put JD Martinez 3, move Pete Alonso back where he's comfortable at cleanup. And man, have they exploded since then. You can look at the whole grimace thing, right? The grimace is what has made the Mets what they were for this winning streak. I think it's the lineup change that really has vaulted the Mets to another level, because you're now getting a JD Martinez at bat in every first inning. That's huge. Francisco Lindor can stay in his leadoff spot where he has been unbelievable this year. And batting second's a good place for Brandon Nimmo. And I think it puts him out of having to be the RBI guy. You know, when you're batting third, there's still that inherent pressure to drive in runs. And the funny thing is, Nimmo has actually done a great job of that this year. He's been better with runners on base than, batting leadoff or batting with the bases clear, I should say. But batting second might be the better fit for him. And all the analytics say put your best hitter second. I've talked about it plenty of times in the past. When all these guys are right, I still actually believe that Brandon Nimmo is the best hitter on this team. Although, I don't know, JD Martinez all of a sudden might be taking that from Nimmo, taking that mantle. But across this era of Mets baseball with Steve Cohen, Nimmo has been the most consistent guy. So I love him in the 2-hole. And you look at what he did in this series, 3 multi-hit games. So maybe he is finally starting to snap out of it. Most importantly, 13 at-bats, 1 strikeout in this series. That's a huge number for Nimmo. Pete Alonso needed that 5 RBI day today. Hopefully that gets him going. He's a guy that can carry your lineup for stretches, and we're seeing JD Martinez do that right now, but that's what happens with a good lineup, is it can be a different guy at different periods of time. Mark Vientos can carry the Mets for a stretch. Maybe at some point Francisco Alvarez gets hot. He carries the lineup for a stretch. Starling Marte has been hot. It can be that baton passing around, but you need those top 4 guys to all be sort of locked in. And it feels like the Mets are starting to scratch the surface of it. And that's really exciting. And speaking of JD Martinez, what a series. He came out to bat 14 times in this series. He went 6 for 9, drew 5 walks. So 11 of the 14 at-bats, he got on base. He only struck out once. I think it was his final at-bat too. Game 1, he goes 1 for 3 with a walk. His 1 hit, the double that drove in 2 that won the game for the Mets. Game 2, he hits 2 home runs, gets on base all 5 times. Game 3, he gets on base 4 out of 5 times, scores a run by walking ahead of Alonso's home run in the first, then doubles in Nimmo in the fourth. Monster series from him. I tweeted this out during the game. I said the Mets 1 through 4. I think I actually said, don't let Pete Alonso get hot when he hit that home run. And then I bumped that tweet again when he drove in the runs in the 7th. Base hit. Gotta love it. When Pete Alonso is locked in, he thinks smaller with runners in scoring position, and he gets the job done. So really good stuff there. I tweeted out, though, don't let Pete Alonso get hot. And I said the Mets 1 through 4 of Lindor, Nimmo, Martinez, and Alonso is the best of any of the teams in what I call the wild card slop. Because that's what it is. I mean, look, if the Mets make the playoffs this year, who knows? Maybe they really carry this over and they prove to be a great team. But most likely, it's because they are the best of the bad teams. That's just the reality of the National League right now. And you look at this race. Cardinals are now in the second wild card spot at exactly 500. Padres, Nationals tied for the third spot at half a game back from them. So they're just one game under 500. Then you have the Diamondbacks, Giants, Reds, Pirates, Cubs, Mets, all jumbled together. Everyone's separated between 2 games, basically, if you look at the second wild card spot all the way down. Look at the top 4 of all these lineups. So we're not going to get too in-depth on this, but I'm just going to rattle off names. Cardinals, you have Mason Wynn, the rookie shortstop, who is doing very well. I still don't think he's any Lindor offensively. Yeah, Alec Burleson, Paul Goldschmidt having a bad year. Nolan Gorman batting cleanup. And Nolan Arenado has been batting 5th. Not a great year from him either. So I think the Mets, if they're 4 at their best, are better. Padres, we just saw it. Arise, Tatis, Profar, Cronenworth. Machado's batting 5th because he's struggling. That's one group that I could see if they all click being better than the Mets or as good as the Mets. But I'm not blown away by it. Nationals, Abrams, Lane Thomas, Jesse Winker, Eddie Rosario, no chance. Diamondbacks, Corbin Carroll, Ketel Marte has been unbelievable this year. Kind of fringe MVP candidate. Jock Peterson and Christian Walker. That's a pretty good group. Is it better than the Mets, though, convincingly? I wouldn't go there. Giants, Brett Wisely, Elliot Ramos, who's been on fire. We had a great piece about him at Just Baseball. If you want to look up Elliot Ramos, which is spelled Heliot, Just Baseball, you can read that. Awesome stuff. But yeah, he's been unbelievable. Patrick Bailey, Matt Chapman. Some of those guys have been hitting well, Wisely and Ramos in particular, but still, you have all-stars in this Mets lineup. Reds, you got TJ Friedl, Ellie De La Cruz, Jeimer Candelario, who has also been better as of late, and Spencer Steer. Good group. I still would take the Mets over them. Pirates, McCutchen, Brian Reynolds, O'Neill Cruz, Nick Gonzalez. There's some talent there, but McCutchen batting leadoff at this stage of his career sort of tells the whole story. Then you have the Cubs. Mike Tauchman has been good this year. Christopher Morel has not been great, particularly defensively, has hit a lot of home runs. Cody Bellinger, Seiya Suzuki. The Cubs have the potential to be really good, but I still look at the Mets and I say, all right, you got Nimmo, who hasn't been an all-star, but certainly has played at that level for the last couple of years. Lindor has been an all-star and a silver slugger in the past. Pete Alonso, all-star silver slugger. JD Martinez, all-star silver slugger. Probably not a Hall of Famer, but Hall of very good. Has been an elite hitter for a long time. I think the Mets have a top 4 that can rival anybody in that grouping. I look at the bottom part of their lineup. Starling Marte has been great lately. He's hitting 286. I talk about WRC plus a lot. Measures hitters on a league average of 100. Marte at 124 ranks 11th among all MLB outfielders. That's pretty damn good. Mark Vientos has slowed down a bit, but we know how ignitable he can be. And now you have this catching tandem that I love because defensively, they're great with Alvarez and Torrens, but also these guys can run into home runs and seem to be real threats with the bat, something that you're not used to seeing with Mets catchers. So I love the catching situation. Second base, here we go. The Jeff McNeil part of this conversation. You got Iglesias sitting with a 435 average on the bench. I think we'll see him against lefties, and there is one in this series. We'll talk about that in the next segment. But I think Jeff McNeil is going to start against all righties. And I understand what they're doing because, look, Jeff McNeil, he is the 2-time All-Star. Jeff McNeil last year did play much better baseball down the stretch. And I talked about how Jeff McNeil can be, again, it's sort of messed up to say a front runner, but what I mean by that is when the lineup clicks, maybe he doesn't put as much pressure on himself, But if you think back, 2019, when the Mets sort of went on that run in the second half, Jeff McNeil was a huge part of it. You look at 2022, when the Mets were a 101 win team, Jeff McNeil was near a 6-win player. He was unbelievable, won a batting title. I think there's something to be said about when the Mets are good, Jeff McNeil typically is as well. And maybe he's turning a little bit of a corner. I was encouraged by some of his at-bats down the stretch. I'm looking forward to seeing more. I'm not 100% bought in by any stretch. But what I am bought in on is that the Mets at second base, they have some answers. Because if it's not McNeil, okay, Iglesias is there. You also have Luke Ritter, who's just been on an unbelievable tear in AAA. He has 43 home runs in his last 169 games played dating back to last year. This season, he's got 62 home runs and 50 RBIs in 62 games. I've talked about him on the show before, but if you're not aware, Luke Ritter was a 7th-round pick by the Mets in 2019. He's never really been considered a top prospect. He's 27 years old, but the guy slugs. And at some point, he might sort of force the Mets' hand. And I think his clearest path to playing time is at second. He can also play first, third, maybe a little bit of corner outfield. And it might just be calling him up to sort of rove around a lot of different places. But he's an interesting option if the Mets need a new second baseman. So I just, that's not even mentioning Brett Beatty or Luis Angel Acuna, who might be promoted by the end of the season. So there really is a lot of depth there throughout this organization right now. So McNeil's going to get some more run here, but at the deadline, I don't think the Mets have to trade for a second baseman if they were in the mix, is my point through all of it. And I think you're going to get some better play from McNeil and Iglesias moving forward at that spot. And then center field, Harrison Bader, batting .272, seems like he gets all the clutch hits. And I mean, I don't think I gave him enough shine for that play he made in the 8th inning. A ball that got on him quick, that could have gone over his head and, completely flipped the game. And Bader timed it perfectly and made a leaping catch. Huge play. His defense has been awesome in center field, and that's why he has been one of the more valuable players on the Mets this year when it comes to WAR, because his defense has been that good. So I look at this team 1 through 9, and I like a lot of their options, and I really believe they can sustain this. Some questions about the pitching, of course. How can they hold up? Is this rotation good enough? Yeah, we can talk about all of it, but the biggest issue, I think, for large portions of the season was the inconsistent play of their starting lineup. And now we're starting to see some consistency. And I really think that they have some staying power. So we'll see if it holds up as they hit the road and play the Texas Rangers. I want to preview that series in just a minute. First, though, today's episode is brought to you by Supply House. Get supplies from the site that's made for skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is a reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining Supply House's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at supplyhouse.com/T-M and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at supplyhouse.com. If you're an everyday listener to the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime something breaks on the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. You get the lineup graphics sent to your phone each day so you know who's in the starting lineup without having to go on social media or look for it. It's just texted right to your phone. You also can take part in our Locked On Mets signed photo giveaways. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find a link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Mets versus Rangers. Nice road trip coming up. You play in Texas, then they go to Chicago with an off day in the middle on Thursday. And this is going to be a fun one. The Rangers are the reigning World Series champs, but they have been struggling lately. They are 33-38 on the season. They went into LA, beat the Dodgers in a series early last week, felt like they were getting some momentum, and then they go to Seattle to face their division rival, and they got swept over the weekend. So they're not feeling great. Game 1 will be John Gray versus David Peterson. John Gray might be an all-star this year. He has a 2.17 ERA, although he did miss some time lately with a groin strain. So that really had him sort of out of the rotation in June. came back, made an appearance out of the bullpen, and then his last time an abbreviated start through 65 pitches. So something to monitor. He might not have a full 100 pitches to go. And the Rangers bullpen has been pretty shaky this year. They have the 5th worst ERA in baseball at 4.67. So if you can drive up the pitch count on Gray, get him out of the game early, maybe face the underbelly of those middle relief innings that a lot of teams struggle with, maybe that's a way to win in game 1. Peterson, I'm excited to watch him pitch. He's a guy that is trying to establish himself still as a fixture in this rotation. And he's been different than McGill, where we haven't seen him rack up strikeouts the same, but he has, kept his pitch count pretty low in some of these starts so far and been able to pitch sort of deep into games. So we'll see what Peterson looks like in this one. In this 6-game road trip, David Peterson is the guy that will get the ball twice. So just something to look out for. It's a big road trip for Peterson. Game 2, we get to watch Luis Severino pitch again. He's going up against Michael Lorenzen, who is looking at Blake Snell and Jordan Montgomery and saying, what is wrong with you guys? It ain't hard. Who needs spring training? Lorenzen was signed late, and he's got a 2.86 ERA in the year, so he's been very good. Meanwhile, Severino has been the Mets' best pitcher. I still like the Mets in that matchup, but Lorenzen has pitched a lot better than the guy that you might remember from the past. Game 3, you got Sean Manaea versus Andrew Heaney. Heaney is a left-handed pitcher, so that's the one I would circle and say probably the game that Iglesias gets in there. I'd also note, though, maybe with Marte's knee, you could slide Jeff McNeil into the outfield for game 1 of this series, get Iglesias back into the lineup. I don't know exactly how much they're worried about Iglesias not playing, but he is hitting .435. It's crazy how long is he going to sustain that just by being on the bench. That'll be an interesting game, though, because I think both Heaney and Manaea are guys that can really go either way. This year, Heaney's got a 4.19 ERA. He's also 2-8, so probably had some lack of run support in some of those outings, or maybe just got shelled a few times, but not a good win-loss record for what that's worth. Manaea, who knows which version you're going to get, but it's going to be a fun series. I'm excited to see the defending World Series champs. I'm glad the Mets are seeing them where they're not playing like the defending world champs. Hopefully they don't get hot this series, but this is a Mets team right now that you got to have some faith in. So I'm excited to see what they do here in Texas, then see them carry that over to Chicago before they have a matchup with the Yankees next week that I'm sure all of us are looking forward to watching those 2 games. But it's going to be a fun week of Mets baseball, and I'll be here for all of it. Make sure if you're listening on the audio side that you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Also, I want to note before I close, actually, I did a show yesterday that you might not have caught on Pete Alonso and JD Martinez. I encourage you to go back and listen to that show. I think it not only tells the story of 2 guys that have sort of interesting future when it comes to the Mets. Will either of them be with the team beyond this year? But I think it also really touches on the varying tracks this season can go right now, where the Mets could be a buyer or at least a stand pat team at the deadline. They could prove that this is a mirage and fall off a cliff again, or they could be somewhere in the middle, and that's where the conversation gets interesting. So if you didn't watch it or listen, I encourage you to go back and do that. Regardless, though, again, that will be all for the show today. You can follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find the link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen or your first watch every day. Now for your second watch, check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube, covering everything in the world of sports. You can also check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming on Amazon Fire TV.